Hello, Scott. How are you today?
I'm doing great, thanks. How are you?
I'm ready to dive right in. I really like this one. So we're going to talk about the Great Pyramid, one of our favorite topics, and we're going to speak specifically about the speed of light encoded in the Great Pyramid. Isn't that right?
That's exactly right. And there are two different ways that we have in this graphic that show that correlation. And so the first one has to do with latitude, and the second one has to do with the design and the actual dimensions of the Great Pyramid. So which one should we tackle first, Geoff?
I love the circles. That one just really speaks to me. It's so easy to get. Can we start with that one?
Yeah, so if we look at the Great Pyramid from above and we analyze its floor plan, if you will, or site plan, what we're going to do is inscribe a circle inside of that square and also circumscribe a circle outside of the square. And if we measure those circles and we find their circumferences in meters, and then we subtract the smaller circle from the larger, we get a measurement which is, let's see, it's 299.765 meters. And it's interesting because the speed of light is 299.792 million meters per second. And so these numbers are 99.99% the same. And
It's a mind blower.
it's kind
And
of
can I
amazing.
ask?
There's this kind of numeric coincidence. If,
Yeah.
if we subtract the the inscribed from the circumscribed circles, we get this number, and it's all based on the metric system, right? And so you're probably
That's
hearing a red
yeah.
flag go up, like, wait a minute, when was the metric system invented?
1700s or something, or so we're told, or
It's like
it was like quite a recent.
1799, I think, or
Yeah.
1800, around then. And
Hmm.
so obviously the Great Pyramid is far older, and this is absurd. Where they weren't measuring with meters, of course, right?
That's what you would
Well,
think.
that's what you would think until you start looking into the metric system and how it was defined based on the meridian circumference of the Earth. And to my mind, the metric system is really an obvious way of applying base 10 to the meridian of the Earth.
Hmm.
So in 1800, the French said, we want to say that the distance from the equator to the North Pole on a meridian running through Paris is exactly 10,000 kilometers. And from that number, we're going to divide by 10,000 and we'll come up with something that we'll call the meter.
Hmm.
Okay. And it turns out that they were, that's how they defined the metric system. And then with GPS satellites, we've remeasured the Earth and we found that they were off by, I think it was 2/100ths of a percent from the actual size of the Earth. So maybe the meter is off by that much if we're basing it purely on the Earth. But
It's like
it's
seven
sort of
kilometers and
ancient history now.
40,000.
We've already defined the meter. We're not changing it. But it's important to recognize that it was defined by applying base 10 to the Earth and the
Hmm.
meridian. And so to my mind, it means that this was rediscovered. This is an obvious way of measuring,
Hmm.
of basing it on the Earth, right? And so what does geometry really mean? It's Earth measure. So
Hmm.
we're using this geometry and we're measuring the Earth and we're coming out with um, the metric system. And so this leads us to the next correlation in the graphic.
Can I take a pause here, Scott, just to
Yeah.
say, like I totally agree with you on the metric system, and that being like a much more ancient system that's been rediscovered. I hear you clearly on that point and agree with it, right? But just on a very basic level, as a coincidence, just as it is on that level, even if we leave the origins of the metric system out of it, and like I just get a kick out of, the difference in the two circles. If you were cut those into straight lines, they work out to be 299.765. And the actual number for the speed of light in meters per second is 299.972. So it's a 99.99% accurate match.
But
Okay.
299.792 million meters per second. is.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah. I'm just sort of, the numbers being the same gives me a bit of a kick, right? Even that on a basic level, I'm like, wow, how cool is that? Even if we read nothing more into it, what a cool coincidence. And then you get into the meter thing. But the reason I'm saying this is because the next correspondence we're going to talk about just kind of like, completely bakes my noodle, because you're kind of going, speed of the light in the Great Pyramid. Okay. Speed of the light in the Great Pyramid. Okay. Well, it's kind of cool. It's a bit of a coincidence, Geoff and Scott, maybe. But so tell me about the next one, because
so the next one is going to raise a red flag that we're going to address. Okay. So the next one is the latitude of the exact center of the Great Pyramid. And this is something that you can look up in Google Earth. And when I first looked it up, probably in 2009, it wasn't as accurate as it is today. And it's only gotten more perfect. It's 100% accurate now with the speed of light. So the latitude of the Great Pyramid is 29.9792458 degrees north. The speed of light is 299,792,458 meters per second. These are the exact same digits. And so you think, oh my God, that's just a coincidence, right? Well, if you think about it, they could have put this monument anywhere, essentially from the equator to the North Pole. I mean, within reason, can't be on the ocean. But there's a vast territory they could have put this monument in. And
anywhere on the planet.
It could have been further south or further north. But it hits this number exactly. And so that's pretty amazing too. It's another coincidence that's pretty amazing. But then you should have a red flag raised and say, wait a minute, we know the ancient Egyptians didn't know how to measure the speed of light. They didn't even probably have a concept of the speed of light.
Or longitude, to be honest, because that was only
latitude.
BC.
Latitude.
Latitude. Yeah.
So that's probably true. I'm not disputing that. But what these correlations suggest is that our history might be a lot deeper and more interesting than we're told, because like when I was a kid, I think they thought civilization was about 6,000 years old. And then they kept finding older and older monuments like Göbekli Tepe in the 90s. And now we think maybe civilization is as much as 12,000 years old. Okay. But anthropologists have found, or paleontologists have found, that we've had anatomically modern human bodies for at least 200,000 years. So we have the same physical vehicles for that period of time. And yet we are to believe that we've only had civilization for 12,000 of those years. That seems absurd to me, that we would have just been ignorant, like cave dwellers for 189,000 years or something, Do you
know what I think of with this, Scott, is, with the Great Pyramid particularly, and these kind of correspondences and coincidences, Jean-Michel, who's a brilliant geometer, speaks of like this kind of perennial wisdom, which kind of like arises into consciousness and then falls back. We forget about it, basically, in dark ages, and then it resurrects itself and we reconnect with it, And so there's something like about, there seems to be layers deeper and deeper and deeper where the same truths reside or something. Do you know what I mean?
The Great Pyramid is like a time capsule, and the wisdom encoded in it is only released when we elevate our own consciousness to the certain level where we start to apprehend the mathematical codes that are built into it.
That's what I think.
Recognize it, we go, my God, it encodes the speed of light. But right now we're kind of in this dilemma where most people will deny that and say, that's absurd, I'm reading into it, it's not there, folks, they couldn't have known this. I know the Egyptologists will say that's crazy, they didn't know the speed of light, they didn't even have a concept for that. But nevertheless, it's accurate. It's really there. And so it to me, it speaks of a deeper history of it, that maybe the Great Pyramid, is it possible that it wasn't built by the ancient Egyptians, but the ancient Egyptians settled next to it because it was such an amazing monument? I don't know. I know there's no inscriptions in it.
Yeah.
And
do you know what I think?
It's a bit of a mystery there.
It's it's all a mystery, to be honest. And you know what's a little bit funny is, like, I struggled when I saw this graphic because, you know, I'm so influenced by Jean-Michel particularly, who I know had a big problem with the meter. He didn't like the meter. He was all about miles, you know, and I wanted to be like a kind of a good adherent of Jean-Michel. And I've had to loosen my kind of, you know, hero worship a bit and sort of say, hey, you know what? Just the fact that meters are wrapped up in the speed of light in these two very impressive ways in the pyramid is enough for me to get a great lift out of the value of the meter, you know?
Well, and
And
you know, Michelle was onto something with the imperial system of measure, you know, being
yeah,
sacred, because it's actually based on the equatorial circumference of the Earth. It's just a
yeah,
different way of looking at it. And so they applied kind of base 12 to that instead of base 10. And so both systems are valid. They're just
yeah,
different ways of looking at it. And I think if John Michel was alive today, he might appreciate what I'm saying here and kind of maybe go with it a little bit, that the metric system isn't all evil. I think he was more reacting to the government mandate that they were going to change everything in, you know,
yeah, you're probably right. Yeah,
and
yeah,
so he was more
exactly.
conservative. He didn't want to change that because he found the sacredness of the imperial system.
Yeah, yeah.
But here I've uncovered the sacredness of the decimal system, of the metric system.
I
Where,
know, it's like base
um,
10. Yeah, I think
it,
it's
it,
so cool.
it all comes back to the earth, I think. So the earth is the real mystery of how it encodes these things.
Mm.
And that's sort of the
Geometry.
basis of sacred geometry. Part of it is measurement
Mhm.
and
Measuring the earth measure. That's what it
measuring the
means.
earth. Yeah.
Geometry. Yeah,
And
yeah.
things kind of unfold from there. So
I
um,
love this one, Scott. It's a really cool one. Yeah, well done. Well done. A great find. Let's ask our lovely viewers to give us a few comments and a like if you can. And if you feel like subscribing, we love that too. Thank you.